Today, the Psychological Society of South Africa will launch guidelines for practitioners who work with gender-diverse patients. It's for the very first time that these practices are being introduced, and its authors say these are not only meant to empower the professionals, but most importantly, they are also meant to give patients the best service. We're now joined by Professor Juan Nel. He is also the former president of the Psychological Society of South Africa. Prof, good morning to you. Thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you very much.
Now, let's just quickly unpack these guidelines. Why did you see the need to introduce them into this profession?
So to start off by saying that this is many years of work in the making, 7 years plus, and indeed it's based on international best practice, it's based on local research and a pressing need that we've picked up with our client base and engaging with relevant sectors. So knowing from that work that not only do the sexually and gender diverse people still face a lot of ignorance, discrimination, prejudice, and sometimes victimization, but that of course those sometimes present barriers to access appropriate and affirmative service delivery as well. So PsySSA it's the Psychological Society of South Africa. It's the nationally representative learned society for psychology professionals. Put a lot of effort into responding to an area that's been silent and perhaps that needed some light to be shed on it.
All right, and some of the viewers could be asking why a need, or rather the need for a set of guidelines that focuses specifically on the LGBTI society and gender diverse in general. Wouldn't this in a way sort of perpetuate stereotypes that community should be treated differently from your heterosexual counterparts? This is a very sensitive issue here in South Africa.
Sure. And it's precisely because it's still such a silenced, taboo area and it brings so much prejudice to the fore. That it was deemed to really be important as a leading national and international society to respond in an affirmative way. But it's a very important question that you pose. So this forms part of a set of guidelines that forms part of a larger set of guidelines around diversity competence. And indeed there, if you think of South Africa as a multicultural, diverse society with a lot of areas that are underdeveloped and under-emphasized in psychological and mental health practice in general. So this is one set of guidelines of a larger set.
Yeah, and as I said, this is a very sensitive issue here in South Africa with the stereotypes around the LGBTI community. Do you really think the guidelines will sort of propel the LGBTI community who may need psychological assistance to actually come out now and seek help?
If I look at the response to our launch invitation, we initially knew that it was important work and we wanted as a society to forefront that indeed they're being launched. Okay. But we prepared for about 30 to 40 people who would take up the invitation at a relatively short notice. Okay. We've been overwhelmed with people interested, and I must say the scholars in the field of sexuality and gender have come out in the broad. So we've even had to change venues for the launch tonight. We're expecting 130, 140 people. So I think we've touched on something that is truly important to respond to. And perhaps just to say that as much as it does speak to LGBTIQA+, it actually extends beyond that. So it's about sexually and gender diverse people, whether they're necessarily from a sexual or gender minority or whether they perceive to be so. Whether they're non-conforming in other ways, and indeed it's precisely because of the taboo, the silence, the sensitivity around this area that psychology professionals have to understand and be aware. Yeah,
it's very interesting, Prof, but we've run out of time. Thank you so much for coming through quickly. Are they binding? The guidelines.
So guidelines are exactly that. They're guidelines. They don't have teeth, so to speak. But of course, a psychology professional, I almost want to say mental health professionals, will have to be aware of it if they're going to be appropriate and affirmative in their services.
All right. Professor Juan Nel is the former president of the Psychological Society of South Africa. We thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
A quick ad break, one more item before we say goodbye.